Hello and welcome back to the Beefy Tech channel. This is my main rig, which I've used for gaming, video editing, and video rendering for the past 2 months. This bad boy packs an Eno 3D iChill 4090, 32GB of custom-tuned 6000MHz RAM, and a fully optimized and undervolted 7950X3D. Given I've been using this CPU for over 2 months, I feel like I finally have garnered enough experience to be able to tell you guys if this CPU is worth your time as a gamer and as a video editor. I don't want to just give my opinion though, I want to show you guys exactly how my games play and perform and how my video editing and rendering experience has been through the 2 months. To begin with the gaming part, I personally had some issues when I first got the CPU, specifically because the CCD allocation was not working as intended. The second I disabled a CCD, everything worked as intended within Warzone 2 and within the other games, so I figured out something was wrong. That kind of instigated the whole thing with Process Lasso, and now Process Lasso has become a core part of running a system with a 7950X3D. And as you're going to see from the footage in the background, the performance is significantly better the second Process Lasso is part of the picture. Why? Because you can run both CCDs, and you can run both CCDs at full performance, no problem, and guarantee that you're not losing frame rates because the CPU is doing what it's not supposed to be doing and switching to different CCDs. Just to mention something important, it was not only Call of Duty that had these issues. It happened in PUBG, it happened in Forza, it happened in Battlefield 2042. As you can see in PUBG, the 1% lows were absolutely atrocious, as the second it switches CCDs, it absolutely destroys the latency and kills your 1% lows, and this was apparent in several games, making Process Lasso a must for all games. This is a screenshot I took earlier today of a game of PUBG after I ran around for like 5 minutes, and as you can see, the performance is significantly better with Process Lasso. Now I don't main PUBG and I don't play it all the time, but over here I was running ultra settings 1440p and the results were incredibly good, especially given I have a 1440p 270Hz monitor. As for Call of Duty performance, it has been great in my opinion. Overall, the Season 3 Reloaded benchmark I've got in the background is a good show of that. 480 average FPS on the CPU and 314 in the lows is not a bad result. I have had better, as a fair note, but it's Season 3 Reloaded and my performance has changed slightly and it's decreased my 1% lows from the best of 340 which I've had before. But overall, still a really strong showing for the 7950X3D. This is Battlefield 2042. I am playing at the lowest of the low settings, specifically to bottleneck the GPU. Mind you, this is 1440p native. I'm quickly going to jump in and quickly demonstrate the performance. I'm going to reset the 1% lows as that's important for, well, you know, being an actual game. And we're going to see how the game performs while actually just playing a bit. That guy is far worse than I am, which is very surprising. Now, I do have to say this isn't Conquest or Breakthrough, but overall the performance is very, very satisfiable in a game of this sort. Now, I do have to say, it could be a bit better in that it still has 7% left on the GPU usage, but at the frame rates that I'm getting, I am not upset about it at all things considered. Oh, whoa, this is a weird spawn, but anyway. Yeah, no. As long as I'm getting above, like, 300 average FPS, to me that is freaking flawless. Now, I know it sounds absolutely crazy to say at least 300 average FPS, but for a 4090 and a 7950X3D, that is the norm and what should be expected. So, it's not as, like, weird to say it out loud in that retrospect. But yeah, I'm extremely happy with the performance. I have a 1440p monitor, so for me, this is literally perfect. It's flawless. It's as good as it can possibly get in terms of a gaming experience, as I get shafted by that guy. While most of you won't know what this game is, it's called Phasmophobia, and it's one of my favorite games to play other than Call of Duty. It's always a blast to play with friends, but it's so terribly optimized that most CPUs cannot actually even drive 50% on a 4090. But what's impressive is that indeed the 7950X3D is a 300 plus FPS CPU, which in my opinion is incredible, given I could barely hold about 200 something on the 5800X3D. The one thing that has sold me on this CPU more than any other is that I can finally enjoy Ashika Island at mostly 300 plus FPS. Warzone is extremely poorly optimized. I'm sure most of you are aware that you can turn from one side to the other and lose 100 FPS over literally nothing, especially in Ashika. But with this PC, I can finally enjoy the performance that I paid for when I bought a 4090, which I was not getting on a 5800X3D or on the 13700K. But with the 7950X3D, I get to enjoy all of that and more. I am somebody that switches platforms extremely often. Why? Just because it's very educational for me. For this CPU, I've spent heaps of time just testing virtually everything on how to set it up properly, how to set up Process Lasso. I've made different guides on it in various ways, shapes, or forms, tested various games, and I've just found that the experience on it has been overall great. Even after the whole AMD debacle with the CPUs catching on fire, the only thing that I got out of that is views, because it was extremely helpful to show people how to save their CPU from a potential fire. Here's the thing, I do offer my experience at a small fee, and my time specifically to help you optimize your computer. All of the things that I do help optimize with are on my YouTube channel for free. But if you want my time and my experience, you can pay a small fee and you can hire it. Moving on to the video rendering and video editing. Now I have to mention I'm a rookie at this. And I'm honestly not even a great editor, but I'm doing my best to essentially learn how to do this professionally. I thought the best way to test this is to essentially move across the timeline. Mind you, the timeline is 4K 30 FPS, so it's going to be quite intensive for the CPU and for the GPU. And that should give you a good idea of how snappy it is to move across a 4K 30 FPS timeline, and give you a good idea on if it's actually fun to edit on this. One thing I did notice is that when you let transitions happen at full quality, the preview does stutter. And mind you, this is just the preview, it's not actually in the final cut of the video. I'll give another example of this in a minute. But I'm pretty sure this does happen on a lot of beefy CPUs, and I don't know if it's a setting that I can change other than changing the quality of the video from full quality to half quality to make the preview be smoother, because I was checking and my CPU usage wasn't insanely high, but as you can see, the preview still stutters. I don't know if it's something to do with optimization, I'm not experienced enough, but I had to let you guys know that it's not perfectly smooth when you switch between transitions on 4K 30 FPS. Now, the reason I know it's the transitions is because I also have a fix for this stuttering issue after a transition. All you have to do is simply click pause and play again, and the whole stuttering stops. What you'll notice is that if I begin the video after the transition happens, there's no stuttering. But if I take it back, let it play, it's going to play the video, and then the stuttering is going to begin. I can then pause the video, play it again, and then it's perfectly fine. So it's not really the end of the world. And as you can see, if you just slap it to half quality on the preview, which makes no difference for the final video, the transitions go through smoothly with no problem. I'm not a professional editor by any means, so I don't know how normal this is, as I have worked with other CPUs, but not on 4K 30 FPS. I've worked with 1440p 60 FPS, which was always pretty much smooth, and it's also smooth on this rig. So I don't know how it would be on other rigs, but I had to give you my experience with this rig. I do have to mention that for the rendering part of things, a lot of the weight is being taken up by the 4090. I do have GPU accelerated hardware encoding, meaning that the 4090 essentially does most of the work for this. So the settings are in the background at which I rendered the previous video at. I normally render at 1440p despite recording in 4K, just to have slightly sharper footage. But anyway, as you can see, I clicked export and I just fast forwarded this entire part over here. I did eventually also bring up Task Manager, just so you can see roughly how much CPU usage and GPU usage was happening during this process. I left it mostly on the CPU usage. And as you can see, during this entire part, the CPU is sitting anywhere between like 10 to 25% usage, so not even that much, showing that indeed the 4090 does do most of the work when it comes to rendering. With that said, the video was about 4.5 gigs worth of rendering, and it took roughly 3 minutes and 20 seconds-ish to render the entire video, which is just enough for you to go to the restroom, get some water, come back, and your video is done. With that said, guys, I want to be honest with you. This CPU is not for the faint of heart, and it's not for people that are not down to tweak their system constantly. Even to this day, I occasionally get a weird driver issue that I have to fix, but being an overclocker and somebody that enjoys tweaking, I have no issue with that, and I in fact love tweaking the hell out of this system to try and squeeze out ever so little more performance. If you're a content creator that wants to get the best gaming CPU, you'll have to dish out some effort, or at least dish out some money, and get your PC optimized. The whole idea of this system is that it needs to run at its best for it to be enjoyable, otherwise you're going to have an absolutely horrible time with it. If you don't want to deal with any of that, buy a 7800X3D. You might have 5% slower performance, but absolutely none of the headaches. Not to mention that the 7950X3D also costs a lot of money and is in fact one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive consumer CPUs out today. My final verdict, buy it if you're ready to tweak, buy a 7800X3D if you're not ready to tweak. Kept it simple, and good luck guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time.